This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Sometimes it's so easy to get lost in the last game or the last couple of games that your favorite team played that it's easy to forget the big picture. We catch ourselves doing this all the time with our teams and with other teams. If a team loses 2 games in a row, all of a sudden their season's over, they're cooked, they're trash, they're never going to recover from this. And if a team wins 2 games in a row, they're the hottest team in the NFL and they're going to be the best football team in the playoffs. They're going to win it all, right? Just don't even play the rest of the season. We do this all the time. I have multiple examples. If you don't believe that we do this all the time or that I'm making this up, I'm not. Like, look at how we talked about the 49ers when they were in that 3-game losing streak. They lost to the Browns, they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, and then they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. They lost those 3 games. And people were like, it's over for the 49ers. They're not that good. They might not even win their division. It's this, it's that. Brock Purdy's trash. They're not that good, all this weapon stuff. And then now, fast forward a few weeks, they put a couple wins together. We're talking about them being the best team in the NFL again. You want another example? Cleveland Browns are a good example, but I'm not even going to go there. The Cincinnati Bengals are an example. I'll say this with Cincinnati Bengals fans, and I'll say this even with Browns fans looking at the Bengals. Everybody thought their season was over after they lost to Pittsburgh. They lost to Baltimore. They lost to Pittsburgh. Oh, it's a wrap for the Bengals. They might have to tank out. They might get Brock Bowers. They might stink. And then they win 1 game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now people are telling me, oh, man, they're going to go 9-7. Juxtapose that with the Cleveland Browns, because at the same time, people are telling me that the Bengals are going to go 9-7. People are telling me the Browns are going to lose out. They're going to lose out. Why? Because they lost 2 games in a row. You're never as bad as your worst game, and you're never as good as your best game. The NFL is a week-to-week league, and it's important that we remember that, or else we'll go insane. I know a lot of people end up being prisoners of the moment. I know a lot of people end up getting wrapped up in the positivity or the negativity of what happened in a game. But understand, a game is just a game. It does not change your record but 1. You lose a game, it stinks, you lose 1 game. You win a game, it's awesome, it's the best feeling you've ever had, it still counts for 1 win. This is not college football, where beating a ranked team means that you might get like extra benefit. No, this is the NFL. You beat the 49ers, it means the same thing as if you beat the Arizona Cardinals. 1 win. Those wins are functionally the same. They're not that different. They don't mean anything different. They're not going to get you anything different when it comes to it's 1 win, it's 1 loss. And right now, I think people are so wrapped up in 2 bad defensive performances that we're throwing out a whole season's worth of evidence that this defense is good. And that's what we're here to talk about. The defense. Defensive expectations. How has the defense lived up to expectations this year? If you've been watching me all year, you would know that this is a series that I've been doing periodically every 4 weeks with the Cleveland Browns, where I'm going to look at the Browns roster, not the Browns roster. I'm going to look at the expectations I set in the preseason for each unit, offensive and defenses, and offenses coming next week. Well, tomorrow probably. Where I look at that and compare what the expectations were to what the reality is with the team right now. Today, we're focused on the defense when it comes to these expectations. I apologize for my graphics being crude. I do. One day, I'll be able to hire a graphic designer so I can have less crude graphics. But for now, you will have to deal with the crudeness of these graphics, which is essentially just some stuff I did in Microsoft. Well, not Microsoft, in Google Docs. All right, so right here, just so you have something to follow along with as I go. This is where the Browns defense is. Now, look, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're looking for this defense to have dipped below expectation, it hasn't. The expectation coming into this season was that the Browns will have a good to sometimes great defense. They have exceeded that expectation on almost every level. What I am evaluating today isn't if they're doing well based on those expectations. We kind of know that they are, but where they're on track to go for the rest of the season. Where is this Browns team tracking good? Where is this Browns team tracking in a negative direction when it comes to the specific conversation about the defense? And if people are wondering why I spent so much time this year, this week, talking about the defense, it's because the defense is the most important unit on this team. I don't care that much about the offense right now. The offense is what it's going to be. It's going to be what it's continued to be. It's going to be what it's been all year with backup quarterback play. Inconsistent, mediocre at best. Just what you got. That's not shade on anybody running that unit. It just is what it is. Joe Flacco is not going to come in and change this offense to a top 10 offense overnight. DTR is not going to come in and change this to a top 10 offense overnight. The best we can hope for is slightly above mediocre. They're not the unit that drives this team. They're not the unit that determines whether this team wins or loses. If they're a disaster and they turn the ball over 8 times in a game, sure. But if they're just mediocre, the offense doesn't really affect whether the Browns lose or win. But if this defense is anything but exceptional or good, then it's hard to win. This defense is the team. This is the most important part of the team. The offense is the offense, but the defense, this is everything. So forgive me if I want to spend a lot of time talking about the most important part and the healthiest part of this Cleveland Browns team. Now, when it comes to sacks, this is where I'm concerned, right? You see the red over where I'm concerned. Almost all of it has to do with run defense and sacks. I'll tell you why I'm concerned as I go forward. Sacks. I had an expectation that Za'Darius Smith and Myles Garrett for the whole year would have about 30 sacks combined. Right now, if you average that out to week 12, the expectation would be that these two would be at 21 combined sacks. Last year, Myles and whoever was number 2 got to like 13 and a half by this point. Right now, they're above where they were last year, but not close to where my expectation is, 15.5. Now, if you look into these numbers, you see why they're not at expectation. It's not Myles Garrett, who's at 13 sacks. It's Za'Darius Smith, who's at 2.5. 2.5. In order to hit this expectation, Za'Darius Smith would have to have about 5 more sacks, 5.5 more sacks. And if Za'Darius were at 6, 7, 8, just like 7, 8 sacks right now, we would feel so much better. But we're not. The truth is, Za'Darius needs to have a multi-sack game like now, right? Za'Darius needs to step it up. He needs to find a way to end the year with 8 to 10 sacks, or else this is going to be a disappointment because it's on track to be a disappointment. Not because Myles Garrett isn't producing, but because Za'Darius Smith is not producing. It's cold truth of it. He has 2.5 sacks. You want him to get to 8 or 10, right? In between that 8-10 range, if he gets to 8 to 10, you're going to hit 30 because Myles is probably going to get to 18. You're going to get close to or hit 30. We thought he could get 12 this year. Ain't even close to that. It's just unrealistic at this point. But if you can get within 2 or 3 sacks within that range of 30 between the two of these guys, I'll take it. But right now, we need an explosion of sacks from Za'Darius Smith in order to make that happen. Another concerning thing is that the Browns team sack number went from an explosion over expectation to slightly above expectation. Now, again, they're 10 above where they were last year, but when it comes to expectation, they have slowed down significantly in sack production over these last 4 weeks. Again, I'm evaluating what they've done on top of everything else from week 8 to 12. They've added about 3 sacks or something like that to their total, and it's almost all from Myles Garrett. Not been the most productive behind the line of scrimmage that we've had. Now, the missed tackles are a huge part of this. The Browns are getting pressure, as you can see on the screen. They're getting 107 pressures so far throughout the season. The expectation was 95. They're well above expectation. They're giant leaps above where they were last year. And they've gotten 34 pressures since the last time I've done this video. So the pressures, it's not the problem. The pressure percentage, it's only dipped 0.7% since the last time I've talked to you guys. It's still at 27.1, which is still good for second in the NFL. The expectation was at 22. So it's not like the pressure percentage has gone down or the pressures itself have slowed down drastically. The sacks have slowed down drastically, which tells me you're missing a lot more tackles behind the line of scrimmage. First downs, you've given up 163. The expectation was that you would have given up 220 at this point. You're plus 67. So you've given up 67 first downs since the last time we talked to you. That has to do with missed tackles. So you're giving up more first downs, but it has to do more with missed tackles. Again, it's very simple. The Browns guys got to make more tackles. They're even getting the opportunities to get these sacks. They're getting the opportunities to get these tackles for loss. They're just missing more tackles than usual. Run game is the same story. Yards per carry, that's gone up 0.5 yards per carry. So half a yard in the last 4 weeks. They went to 12 there, 4.2. The expectation is that they stay under 4.4. So they're under expectation. So that's good. Yards per game, they're at 107. The expectation was that they hold teams under 109. Last year, they gave up 165 yards on average. Woo! They stunk last year. My goodness. So still better. Still adding more than you want, rushing touchdowns, they're above expectation, right? For whatever reason, this hasn't been a good red zone defense against the run. It just hasn't. When it comes to the secondary, passes defended, they're at 50. The expectation was that they'd be at 60. I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of plays that this defense has because they do force a lot of 3 and outs. And again, they've added 14 pass deflections over the last few weeks. So that's pretty good, actually. That's not that bad of a number. Quarterback rate, they're still really good at quarterback rate. I think it's gone up 4.2%, with 4.2 points in that rate since. But still a really good quarterback rate, still good for third in the NFL, still under expectations, still a very good defense. Score percentage hasn't gone up at all. Well, score percentage has gone up a little bit. I think they were at 21, which was a ridiculously low number, but they're still good enough to be number 1 in the NFL at 25.3. Now, look, some of these numbers are regressing a little bit towards reality. The Browns were having some crazy numbers early in the year, and you're seeing them start to regress a bit towards reality. That doesn't mean that the defense stinks now suddenly. It just means that some numbers aren't holding the way that you would expect them to, just because those expectations were unrealistic to begin with. Takeaways are at 16. The expectation at this point would be that it'd be at 16. They've gotten plus 3 turnovers since the last 3 weeks. The interesting thing on the turnover stuff is if you only count the turnovers from when DTR or Joe Flacco's in the game, you've only had 2 turnovers on offense when those 2 quarterbacks are in the game. PJ Walker's responsible for like 5 of those turnovers that they've had. But with those 2 quarterbacks who you expect to play in whatever form for the rest of the season for this team, it's probably going to be a little bit of both, to be honest with you. It's going to probably be DTR some games, Joe Flacco some games. But the combination between those 2, you've had 2 turnovers. So you've been plus in the turnover margin since you've added those quarterbacks. It's just PJ Walker can't be in there because he's a turnover faucet. But that's not that bad. The takeaways could probably stand to go up, but it's not terrible. Like, I think this defense is better than being middle of the league in takeaways. Tackles for loss, they're still very good at this. 71, first in the NFL. They've added 20 since we last talked, which is an incredible number. Expectations that they be at 57. Last year, they were at 48 at this time. They're really good. Tackles for loss, that still hasn't gone anywhere. They can still make those big plays to push offenses back, and that's part of the gamble that you take by being aggressive, which tells me the scheme really ain't the problem with the team right now. Quarterback hits about 74, which is good for 13th. Expectations that they be at 71. Last year they were at 46. Now obviously this is much better than you were last year, plus 16 since the last time we talked. That's a number that needs to probably go up a little bit. Again, that goes with pressure, that goes with being able to have those opportunities, that goes with getting to the quarterback a little faster, that goes with all of this other stuff. Interception percentage 2.8%, still like 11th in the league. Last year it was at 2.1, which is good for 19th. You have 9 interceptions. The expectations that you be at 10. Last year you were at 8, so you're in that in-between range, and the drive start is still terrible. You're still the worst team in the NFL when it comes to drive start. You're starting your drives at the 30-yard line. A lot of that has to do with all the turnovers early in the year and some of the turnovers that they've had lately. I think the Pierre Strong fumble and the Joe Flacco pick, well, not pick six, but close to pick six, really messed this number up for the Browns defense and continues to mess this number up for the Browns defense. But the truth is that this is still a very good defense. You can look at these numbers and say to yourself, this is a really good defense. They just have these spurts of not tackling well, of not finishing plays. But when they do that, they are beyond the best defense in the NFL. They just have to do it more consistently. And I think a lot of what has gone wrong when it comes to them not being able to finish plays is just fatigue, right? Like they're tired. And that happens when you lean on a unit as heavily as the Browns have leaned on the defense. That doesn't mean that they're done for the rest of the year, but that does mean that, you probably want the offense to turn the ball over less. Now, I do think help is coming in that. I pointed out that Joe Flacco and DTR, when they're in the game since Deshaun Watson has been taken out for the year, both those quarterbacks haven't shown a tendency to turn the ball over a ton. Joe Flacco did concern me at the end of that game because I just have a hard time coming to grips with that interception he threw at the end of that game. Like there are interceptions you throw because you have bad luck or you get a bad bounce. There are interceptions you throw because you're just being stupid. And that was a stupid interception. So that concerns me that it happened in the fourth quarter. But other than that, I still think that Joe Flacco, for the most part, is going to take care of the ball. Same thing with DTR. So they're getting help on that front, and I think that will help them. It's all about time of possession on offense. You really just want this offense to be a slug. Like, hold the ball, time of possession, get some field goals, score a touchdown every once in a while. That's what you want this offense to do. Just do a good job of being a slug. If you could do that, I think the defense could take over, carry on, do what they need to do. Also, Myles Garrett getting healthier, Denzel Ward getting healthier, also add a lot to that. And I think once those things kind of combine, this defense will be back to normal. It's hard. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and be like, oh, we stink. Myles is done. He's hurt. He's not the same. Let's take a deep breath for a second and remember that this is the same stuff we said earlier in the season about this defense. And then we got to the point where we were calling them all world again. This is probably just a good defense. It might have a couple of bad games here and there, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. I remember telling Bengal fans and Steeler fans, hey, man, I don't think I would count the Bengals out because they still have really good players on offense. Everybody laughed at me when I said that. Oh, man, did you not see them the last 2 weeks? They're done. They're cooked. Have you not been watching? I just don't get so caught up in what happens on a game that I forget the big picture. And that's why I'm saying here, don't get so caught up in what you've seen in a game or two that you forget the big picture. And the big picture is that this Browns defense has put together a nice body of work against some really good teams because they're a really good defense. They might have a couple of off games, but they're still really good. And it's important to remember that so you know what you're dealing with every Sunday. But that's my thoughts. That's my my review of the expectation of the Browns defense. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.